everyone to this session in which we are closing our activities of the online activities of the World Federation of Young Theosophists. It's a big pleasure to have all you here, so many known faces, and also to welcome Chris, who is going to talk about the inner meaning of Christmas that is approaching. So I just want to say some words about Chris. He's a registered nurse, licensed in the Philippines and in the USA, and he has a master's degree in nursing. He works currently as a clinical training supervisor for a US-based health insurance company. And he is the youngest member of the Board of Trustees of the Theosophical Society in the Philippines. Also, he is a board member of the World Federation of Young Theosophists. He leads the Unity of Life meditation group in the Philippines as well. And he is as well the advisor of Free Space, that is the youth group of the Theosophical Society in the Philippines. And as we know, Christopher is a hardworking person, always involved in service, helping everyone around. So it's really a pleasure and an honor to welcome you. Welcome, Christopher C., for this lecture. After the lecture, we will have a short session of question and answer and a meditation that Chris himself will conduct. So thank you. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you, Catalina. Thank you for those kind words. Let me just share my screen before we continue. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So, greetings everyone, and welcome to the 5th Biweekly Social Event for the World Federation of Young Theosophists. So for today, our activity will be involved about the inner meaning of Christmas. So as Catalina mentioned, the first portion will be a short talk on the inner meaning of Christmas. Then we'll have a short, probably 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A, and then we'll end with a short period of loving kindness or metta meditation. So without further ado, let's start with our talk on the inner meaning of Christmas. So before we continue with our discussion, let's first discuss why we need to study this as spiritual seekers. So what's the significance of studying the inner meaning of Christmas in our lives as spiritual seekers? Well, first of all, it will help us to see a brief overview of the history of Christmas. So we will not really dive deeply into the history of Christmas, but we'll look into some of the milestones and when our current version of Christmas actually came into being. Next, it will help us to review the inner meaning of the life of Christ. So remember, I'm sure for those of you who are already familiar with Theosophy, you are aware that Theosophy postulates that when we are studying scriptures or myths or holy texts from different religions, we are told that whenever there is something which is illogical or highly immoral in the teachings, and this applies to all religions, not just to the Bible. There is something there that is, there's an inner meaning to that story. It's not just an external event that happened, but there's an inner meaning, an inner teaching that the story is trying to tell us. It can be a psychological event or a spiritual event. So here we will be delving into the story of Christmas or the birth of Christ and what it symbolizes for us as seekers of truth, as spiritual seekers. And lastly, it will help us to understand the inner meaning of Christmas and how we can prepare ourselves for the birth of the Christ consciousness within. So for our topics to be discussed, so as always, whenever I discuss anything of an esoteric nature, I always begin with what the Buddha has said as quoted in The Secret Doctrine. And then we will discuss a brief overview of Christmas and also a brief history of Christmas. And then we will dive deeply into the inner meaning of Christmas. So let's begin with what the Buddha said. So this is quoted in the Secret Doctrine. So the Buddha told us that we should not believe in anything because we heard it, because it is spoken or rumored by many, because it is written in our religious books, and we should not believe simply because our teachers and our elders have told us. We should also not believe in anything just because it's handed to us in tradition. Rather, we should only believe in something if after observation and analysis, when you find that anything agrees with reason and is conducive to the good and benefit of one and all, then that is the time we accept it and live up to it. So remember that Madame Blavatsky told us that there is no dogma in Theosophy. There are teachings, but we are free to accept or reject these teachings depending on the light of our own inner wisdom or intuition. Remember that there are no dogmas in Theosophy, and that the only common belief among all Theosophists is the belief in the one life and the brotherhood of all men. As long as we believe that, we can consider ourselves as Theosophists. But for all other teachings, we have to be able to analyze, um, to to study for ourselves, and to come up with our determination for ourselves whether we agree with these teachings or not. So remember that our first teacher is our soul or higher self, and the way that we can access the wisdom of the higher self is through study, meditation, and service. So whenever anybody, including myself, presents us with a spiritual teaching, we always study it first, and we try to determine, does this teaching make sense? Is it logical? Is it rational? If it does, then perhaps there's a kernel of truth in it. If it doesn't, then perhaps we can, if it doesn't, then perhaps we can set it aside for the time being, and maybe we can come back to it at a later time. If it makes sense to us on a rational basis, then we have to sit down and meditate, and we have to determine for ourselves, does this teaching resonate with something deep within us? If it does, then probably, again, there's another kernel of truth within that teaching. But if it's not, then probably it may not be true, or it may not be appropriate for this particular period in time, and we can set it aside and come back to it at a later time. And lastly, whenever we study esoteric teachings, we should always remember that the Christ told us that it is by their fruits that we shall know them. So remember that whenever we apply a particular spiritual teaching, if the spiritual teaching helps us to become better people, if it helps us to become more loving and more kind, then perhaps this spiritual teaching has a kernel of truth in it. But if the teaching makes us more selfish, it makes us more prideful, it makes us more egotistical, then perhaps that teaching is not right for this particular point in time, and we have to set that aside for the time being. So with that, let's continue on with our discussion. So we're all familiar with Christmas. So it's an annual festival commemorating the birth of Jesus Christ, at least in the Christian tradition. It is a religious and cultural celebration among billions of people around the world. And usually it's celebrated on December 25. A brief history of Christmas. So the nativity sequence was included in the Gospel of Matthew and Luke, and it prompted early Christian writers to suggest various dates for the anniversary. So the early Christians connected Jesus to the Son because of such phrases such as the Son of Righteousness. Sometimes it's because also he was the light of the world. So they tried, in order to ease the transition from paganism to Christianity, they opted to celebrate the birth of Christ during the winter solstice. So the winter solstice was usually celebrated by the Romans during December 25th. Although other pagan traditions celebrate it on December 20th, some 21, on the others on the 22nd, but in Rome, it was usually celebrated on December 25. In the Northern Hemisphere, the winter solstice is the time when the day is at its shortest. So we have a longer period of nighttime. So in the pagan tradition, we celebrate the coming or the rebirth of the sun during the Yuletide season or during the winter solstice. So it is said that in the longest night, there is the seed of hope. And that is what they were celebrating during those pagan times. So in order to ease the transition from paganism to Christianity, they opted that Christmas should also be celebrated on December 25. The first recorded Christmas celebration was in Rome on December 25 on 336 AD. And Christmas played a role in the Arian controversy. So I will not dive deeply into the Arian controversy, but just to give us a short idea of this controversy, it concerned the question about the divinity of Christ. So it was said that the Father begetted the Son, and therefore some of the early Christian fathers argued that since the Father begetted the Son had a beginning, and therefore he had an end. And therefore they argued that the Son and the Father, they were not equal. However, I think even in today's modern Christian times, the idea is that there is a trinity of God. There is a divine persona or a divine trinity behind one God. So the prevailing thought right now in Christianity is that there is one God in three persons. So the Father and the Son, they are of the same substance. But in the Arian controversy, this was questioned. Now, after this controversy, the holiday went on decline. It wasn't celebrated that much, or it was just celebrated in passing. Now, during the Puritan times, Christmas was banned because it was a time of drunkenness and misbehavior. So Christmas did not have the spiritual connotation that it had, that it did before, and that we have right now. It was just a time to be drunk and to be happy. So it was restored in 1660, but it still had a disreputable image in the minds of many people. The Christmas that we are celebrating today actually started in the early 19th century with the Oxford movement. So many writers during this time, such as Washington Irving and Charles Dickens, they helped created by their writings, they helped created or paint a picture of Christmas as a time for family, children, kindness, gift giving, and Santa Claus. So the tradition continues on today, but it started during the 19th century. And because of the efforts of these writers and because of the Oxford movement, we now associate Christmas with positive events as a time for family, a time of kindness, a time of giving, and a time for children. Okay, so now let us move on to the inner meaning of Christmas. So as previously mentioned in our first slide, Theosophy postulates that behind the myths and the holy scriptures of the world, there are inner meanings or inner teachings. So for example, we are told that whenever there are illogical things that are happening in the stories or immoral things that are happening in the stories, there's actually an inner story or an inner teaching behind that. So for example, in the biblical story of Joshua, we are told that Joshua made the sun stand still. Of course, this is not physically possible because when the sun stands still, it will disrupt the cosmic order of the universe and it will probably destroy the entire solar system. However, based on Theosophy, there's an inner teaching behind this story. The sun is actually a symbol of the monad or the divine spark. So when Joshua made the sun stand still, it means that he actually connected and became one with his monad. And that is the reason why he was able to defeat his enemies. And his enemies represents the lower desires. Another example is the story of Samson and Delilah. So in the story, we are told that Samson had incredible strength as long as his hair was not cut. Of course, in real life, our hair is not connected to our physical strength. Otherwise, people who are bald will be very physically weak. But in the inner teachings of Theosophy, we are told that the hair is a symbol of the Antakarana. The Antakarana is the symbol of our connection with the higher self and the lower self. So as long as Samson is connected via the Antakarana to his higher self, he cannot be defeated by his enemies, again represented by the lower desires. But he yielded to Delilah, which represents sexual desire or lust. And because he yielded to that, she was able to cut off his Antakarana. And because of that, he was able to be defeated by his enemies. So in this biblical story, we are also told that the life of Christ itself is a symbol of the pathway of initiation and discipleship. So the story of the Christ, it may or it may not be historical, and there are people who will argue whether or not it is a historical fact or not. But in Theosophy, our focus is the inner meaning or the inner symbolism of the Christ life and how it refers and how it symbolizes our stage of growth and development. So in Theosophy, there are stages which we call initiations. Initiations, in the broadest sense, refers to stages of expansions of consciousness. So we are told in Theosophy that everything evolves. So we have a saying in Hinduism that God sleeps in the mineral, dreams in the plant, awakens in the animal, and thinks in man, and then he becomes a fully conscious being in the Christ. So this is the portrait of evolution. In the secret doctrine, we are told that for a specific life wave, or for a specific group of monads or a specific group of souls to move from one kingdom, let's say the kingdom of humans or the human kingdom, for us to move to the next kingdom, the Jani Chohan kingdom or the angelic kingdom, it would usually take us an entire chain period. And the entire chain period would take millions and millions of years. However, the masters have created a pathway of initiation and discipleship that will allow us to enter this pathway. So usually we work with the masters by becoming a disciple or a chela in order to accelerate our own evolution. This way, the millions of years of evolution will be compressed in a number of lifetimes, and we can evolve at a much faster rate. However, for most of us, we're not yet there. We're not yet at the stage wherein we are in conscious contact with our own master. However, despite this, there are some themes that are universal to all of us, which are symbolized by the Christ life. The entire teaching regarding initiation is discussed in the book by Leadbeater called The Masters and the Path. And if you're interested in this, it would be best if you would read that book, because the topic is too broad for us to discuss fully in a short talk. So the first stage in the life of Christ is the birth of the Christ child. This represents the first initiation, and this refers to the birth of the soul in the heart of the aspirant. This is the awakening of the mystical consciousness within us. The next stage in the life of Christ is the baptism in the River Jordan. Theosophy teaches us that this is symbolic of the second initiation. The aspirant is immersed in the waters of sorrow. The waters of sorrow represents the astral plane. And the aspirant is given powers, and the aspirant will be tested whether he will use these powers for selfish ends or if he will use these for the service of humanity. So in the story of Christ, he went to the desert for 40 days and he was tempted by the devil to use his powers for his own personal goal. If an aspirant failed, he will become a black magician. But if he succeeds, then he will become a second degree initiate. The third stage is the transfiguration, which is symbolically represents the third initiation. Here, the aspirant experiences a brief period of illumination. So in the life of many mystics, there is usually a description wherein during meditation or during a certain activity, they suddenly achieve a brief period of enlightenment. This period of enlightenment didn't last very long, but this period of enlightenment was enough to transform their life. And according to some of the stories, all their lives, they were trying to find that same state of enlightenment. Some succeeded, some didn't. The fourth stage is the crucifixion. This represents the fourth initiation. It is the death of the separate self and of all separateness. In the Buddhist tradition, this is known as the stage of the Arhat. This is the last incarnation before a person becomes a fully realized master of the ageless wisdom. And the fifth stage is the resurrection, representing the fifth initiation. This is when a person becomes a master of the ageless wisdom. He masters his lower self and becomes a master of the ageless wisdom. Therefore, he is now free from the cycle of death and rebirth. He can come back in the cycle of rebirth if he wants to serve, but his reincarnation is no longer compulsory. So this entire view, we will now focus on the first stage, because this one is represented by the birth of the Christ child, which is represented by the Christmas story. And regardless whether or not we are accepted disciples or whether we are aspirants, everyone is seeking the awakening of the soul within our own heart. And the story actually provides us some guidance on how we can awaken that mystical consciousness within our own heart. So let's proceed. So here now is the symbolism of Christmas. So the nativity scene is a symbol of the disciples' heart. The manger represents humility. It is only in a simple, humble heart that the Christ consciousness be born. So this is the first requirement. For us to awaken the spiritual nature within us, we must learn to develop humility. We must learn to let go of our ego. As long as we are full of ourselves, as long as we are full of our ego, the Christ consciousness cannot be born within our own hearts. Next, the Archangel Gabriel represents the spiritual, creative, and fructifying power of the divine self in man. And the Virgin Mary represents the immortal self in each one of us in its vesture of light. So in this sense, in the story wherein there is an annunciation, wherein the Archangel Gabriel goes to Mary and asks her whether she wants to be the mother of Jesus Christ, the Virgin Mary actually represents our causal body. She represents our higher self. And the Archangel represents the divine spark or the divine energy. And it is from our higher self, once it accepts this divine impulse, that the Christ or the mystical consciousness is born. Next, Joseph. Joseph represents the logical mind. He is strong, stable, and dependable. However, the logical mind alone cannot give birth to the Christ child. So Joseph is a very important character in the story of Christ because he served as the father figure. But he is not the one who gives birth or is the father of the Christ. It's actually God who, according to the story, who manifested as the child. However, this is a very important part of the story. So remember, in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, we are told that before we go into the practice of yoga, we have to observe first the yama niyamas. These are the observances and restraints. This is because the ethical life is the foundation of the spiritual life. The spiritual life is something bigger, it's something grander, it's something more beautiful than the ethical life. However, in preparation for the awakening of our spiritual life, most spiritual traditions, Christian, Buddhist, etc., they would tell us first that we have to live an ethical life because this will serve as the foundation. Without this foundation, the spiritual life will crumble. However, the logical mind alone cannot give birth to the Christ child. So at a certain stage, we have to live based on certain rules in order to live an ethical life. But at a certain stage of our development, we have to also learn to let go of these rules once the Christ child or the mystical awareness is already open within us. Okay. Next, Bethlehem represents the world, both spiritual and material, in which the Christ child needs to be born. So Bethlehem represents the world, both in the spiritual and the physical aspects. Next is the inn. So remember in the story, Mary is about to give birth in Bethlehem, so they tried to go into an inn, but the inn was full. So the inn represents the material mind. The inn is too full to accept the Holy Family. Similarly, our material mind or our lower mind is too full or too preoccupied with the affairs of the world. Hence, the Christ consciousness cannot be born. So if we want the mystical awareness to be awakened in us, we must learn to live an ethical life. But at the same time, we must also devote time for spiritual practices. We must not be fully devoted only to the pursuit of worldly or material things. We must also aspire for certain things and we must allot time for these spiritual pursuits. For example, meditation, doing time, carving out time for service. So these are activities that we can do in order to facilitate the awakening of the mystical consciousness or the Christ consciousness within. As long as our mind is too preoccupied with material things, the Christ consciousness or the mystical consciousness cannot be awakened. So remember, we have to develop humility. We must learn to live the ethical life. And we must not be too preoccupied with material things. Otherwise, the soul consciousness or the Christ consciousness within cannot be born in our hearts. Next, the manger represents the heart. The simplicity of the manger represents the renunciation of all material desires. This is needed for the spiritual birth. So as previously mentioned, if we are too preoccupied with our own ego, then the Christ consciousness within cannot be born because we are too preoccupied with material desires. We are too preoccupied with ourselves. Therefore, the Christ consciousness cannot be born. The animals in the manger represent our passion and our desires. And again, the Christ consciousness or the mystical awareness cannot be born in us if we are still driven by our desires, our passion. So if we are driven by lust, if you are driven by anger, if you are driven by negative passions and negative emotions, it would be very difficult for the Christ consciousness, for that innate mystical awareness to be born in our hearts. Next, remember that when the Christ was born, the angels appeared before the shepherds. So the angels appear before the shepherds. They represent the spiritual power that descend upon the disciple. This power allows one to see temporarily the oneness of all life. Hence, the angels are singing peace on earth and goodwill towards men. So this tells us that once the Christ consciousness is born in our heart, a certain amount of spiritual energy is already infused in us. It's not as great as the third initiation wherein illumination pours through our mind. But during the first initiation, an inspiration comes to us. And this inspiration will inspire us to do good, to act in terms of the divine plan. The shepherds represent the hierarchy of adepts who act as shepherds of men. They are made aware of the mystical birth by the descent of the spiritual power. In esoteric literature, we are told by the masters that they will not miss anyone who is ready to enter the path of discipleship and initiation. This is because when they look into the astral plane, they will see only darkness. But if there's a person who is already ready to become an initiate or to become ready to become a disciple, they will see a light in the head. And they will not miss out because it will appear to them like a star in the sky. That's how esoteric literature tells us. So once the master looks out into the world, they will see the light in our head and they will know that we are ready. Next, the three magi represents the upper triangle. This is our higher self, the Atma Buddhi Manas of the Theosophists. And the three wise men bestow gifts to the Christ child just as the newly awakened higher triangle bestows its strength to the newly awakened mystical consciousness. As our mystical consciousness awakens, our higher self, the three higher principles, the Atma Buddhi Manas, also begins to awaken. And their energy begins to suffuse us and they begin to infuse our personality and our everyday consciousness. Let me end this talk with a short quote from Angelus Silesius. This is actually a German priest. He said that Christ could be born 1,000 times in Bethlehem, but all of that will be in vain until that Christ consciousness is actually born within each one of us. And that's the end of my talk. And I guess we can start with our short Q&A portion.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Chris, for that brilliant, deep, and very inspiring talk that reminds us the meaningful event of the birth of that essence of Christ in ourselves. And just a reminder before we continue with our question and answer session, Seth wrote in the chat that whoever is here and is new, if he or she would like to join the World Federation of Young Theosophists, please let us know. You can write in the chat. Other than that, then thanks again, Chris, and let's go ahead with the question and answer session. So, please, the floor is all yours, everyone who wants to. You can write your questions on the chat or raise your hand, whatever you prefer.
Or you can also share your comments if you have additional insights that will help our group as well.
There is a comment from Mary, from Sarah. Beautiful and deep presentation. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
I was wondering, Chris, if maybe you can later share the presentation with us. Maybe we can, whoever wants to
Sure.
have it is very, really nice. And that comparative chart that you made with all the moments, the different initiations, I guess it's quite useful.
Sure,
Yeah.
thank you. That's actually a very short and simple description. If you will read the Masters and the Path, the descriptions are more in depth there. So I encourage everyone also to study that book. It will help us really in our spiritual growth. Arnie has a question.
Arnie has a question, yes.
He says, can you share your insight in how Christmas is celebrated differently in the liberal Catholic Church? Sorry, Arnie, I'm not familiar with I'm not familiar with how the liberal Catholic Church celebrates Christmas. I don't think they're active in the Philippines. Do they have separate rituals or separate meditations?
Okay, in respect to what Arnie is asking, I don't also know if they celebrate it differently, but like I don't know, in other parts of the world, we have like a 9-day rosary that begins normally on 16 and goes until 24. Every night there is like a small reading part from the Bible. And at least in some places of South America, there is one issued by the Liberal Catholic Church, which is also the 9-day rosaries, but instead of the readings that the usual rosary has, every day it's dedicated to explain one of the aspects, as Chris has just explained, of Christmas. So the meaning, what is the symbolism of Mary, of the Christ, of the Jesus, and every day is dedicated to that. I don't know if that is like worldwide, like a standard thing of the liberal Catholic Church, but at least in some South American countries, that is there. So of course they focus more in the esoteric meaning of that, as per what I know.
Catherine, thank you. This is very similar to the Yule celebrated by the pagans, which is still now getting popular, especially in England, where your explanation narrative actually matches. As far as I thought I should also share, since I'm the Paramahamsa Yogananda. Paramahamsa Yogananda's concept is very theosophical regarding Christ consciousness. He looks at Krishna consciousness and from the east and Christ consciousness the west as two sides of the same coin. So this is very important. Tomorrow I'm joining an 8-hour meditation. We do it every Christmas. It's an 8-hour meditation session on trying to merge with this Christ consciousness. So this happens 1 week before Christmas because people go away. So tomorrow we start around 8 in the morning, 10 in the morning till about 6 in the evening. And we have chantings of Swami Kriyananda's music every 2 hours to keep us into the groove. And there's a kind of a prelude they tell you about how to touch upon this Christ consciousness, because Christmas is fantastic in terms of family reunion, shopping, enjoying the Christmas cake, the Christmas tree. All that is fantastic, but that's on the outside. As Theosophists, I think we should partake in the outside merriment. It's important for us to be with the family, with the society, and enjoy with the kids, so that they also get inculcated. But then we maybe should not stop with that. The inner meaning, which Chris actually explained today, should become more important to us in the practice of Christmas. So a lot of the meditative practices are getting more popular during Christmas. The Theosophical world, I remember Bishop Charles Strauss in the Liberal Catholic Church in Adyar used to have this midnight mass in Adyar. I think Catalina will also be joining this year. But I don't know anybody there in place of Charles Strauss. Charles Strauss was the last bishop I knew of the Liberal Catholic Church. And he was based in Adyar, and I knew him very personally. So that's very important. Yeah, and that's important. So the consciousness is, as you said, that Antakarana, crossing over the bridge, is very important in this Christmas uh, uh, time, because you have the December 21st, the solstice, which again they say is a very magnetic time for people to be in touch with this meditative consciousness of Christ. So I thought this is what I can share with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arnie. Oh, we have another comment from Enrique. So thanks for the presentation. What was interesting to me was the idea that when immoral things happen in a story, they are connected to inner meanings. I think that also applies to other mythologies. For example, in Egyptian mythology, brother and sister gods get married. But if we look at the inner meaning, they actually represent certain states of consciousness. And when these states of consciousness intermingle, it forms another state of consciousness. So that's why if we look at it, if we read it in a literal sense, it appears to us as being immoral. But if we know the inner meaning behind it, it's actually conveying either a psychological or a spiritual truth. By the way, I based the interpretation of the symbols on the book by Jeffrey Hudson on the hidden wisdom of the Holy Bible. I also love myths, so I tried to apply the same symbolisms that he gave for the Bible to other mythologies, particularly Greek myths. They seem to fit as well, but I have yet to try it for other mythologies like Egyptian or Norse, etc. But I think they will also fit.
Yeah, actually, what you said, it reminds me that this story of Jesus is not seen in other kind of mythologies also, just with different names and in different times, no? Which just remind us the universality of all these stories and how different cultures have the same, because it is in fact an inner journey, no, an individual journey, and they express from different points of view approaches.
Hi, regarding this, I would like to ask you, apart from the Bible, I think there is a book by Annie Besant about Christians. What books or reads would you recommend on Christians? Because you know that the teachings of Christians have been misunderstood and misused in history.
I think I think Annie Besant has a book called Esoteric Christianity. I think that's also a good book. It doesn't discuss the mythologies and the stories, but it discusses topics such as prayer. So she differentiates the different types of prayer there. So I think that's a good bridge between conventional Christianity and theosophy. And then I would also go with some of the teachings of some of the writings of Jeffrey Hudson in Light on Sharing the Light. Some of his ideas there are also very good, and it will help bridge the gap between Christianity and theosophy.
Hello, Chris. Thank you very much for your talk. And this is Sarah. So I just wanted to mention that the symbology that you explained is very useful actually to understand the inner meaning from the spiritual point of view. And it reminds us that this is really an important aspect to try to discover or investigate, because as HPV also said, the secret doctrine, you really need to also understand some of the symbolism that's in there to really understand the full meaning of it all. And also for this kind of traditions, there are lots, there is a deep meaning inside, and once we understand it from this point of view, it opens so many new horizons. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Do you want to proceed with the meditation, Chris?
Okay, sure. Let me just share my screen again. Let me just prepare the slide. Okay. So we will be using for this event, we will be using the Metta prayer or the meditation on loving kindness. So this is a Buddhist form of meditation wherein we try to cultivate loving kindness towards ourselves and everyone around us. In Theosophy, since we believe also in the power of thought, we believe that this meditation will also have a positive influence on the subtler planes, and ultimately it will also have a positive influence on our environment as we continue with this meditation. So I displayed the meta prayer that we will be using. So if we're ready, please sit up straight, feet flat on the floor, close your eyes, and just relax. Now, slowly, I want you to inhale deeply. And as you inhale, visualize peace entering your body. And as you exhale, let all stress and tension flow away from your body. Feel your entire physical body relax, relax, relax. Now, gently, I want you to focus your awareness upon your heart center. Visualize your heart center. See your heart center pulsating with a vibrant pink light. Visualize this warm pink light pulsating through your heart center. Let us visualize this energy of loving kindness being radiated from your heart center. Now, slowly, let us visualize this warm pink light radiating from our heart center, filling our entire physical body and our entire being. Let us bless ourselves with the energies of loving kindness. Let us silently affirm, may I be peaceful. May I be happy. May I be safe. May I awaken to the light of my higher nature. May I be free. Now, gently, let us once again focus our awareness upon our heart center. Let us once again visualize our heart center radiating a warm pink light. This warm pink light represents the energies of loving kindness. Its energies heal everything that it touches. Now, slowly, let us visualize our immediate family. Let us call to mind our immediate family. Let us visualize blessing each and every member of our family with the warm pink light of loving kindness from our heart center. Let us visualize and bless our entire family with the energies of loving kindness. Silently, let us affirm, may everyone in my family be peaceful. May everyone in my family be happy. May everyone in our family be safe. May everyone in our family awaken to the light of their true nature. May everyone in our family be free. Now, slowly, let us once again focus our awareness upon our heart center. Let us visualize our heart center radiating a warm pink light. This warm pink light represents the energies of loving kindness. This energy heals and blesses everything that it touches. Now, slowly, let us now visualize or call to mind our friends, especially those who are closest to our heart. Let us visualize blessing and projecting this warm pink light towards our friends. Let us bless our friends with the energies of loving kindness. Together, let us silently affirm, may all our friends be peaceful. May all our friends be happy. May all our friends be safe. May all our friends awaken to the light of their true nature. May all our friends be free. Now, gently, Let us once again focus our awareness upon our heart center. Let us once again visualize our heart center radiating a warm pink light. This warm pink light represents the energies of loving kindness. This energy blesses and heals everything that it touches. Now, slowly, let us visualize all of our co-workers, both at work and in the Theosophical Society. Let us call to mind our co-workers and friends, and let us visualize blessing our co-workers with the light of loving kindness. Let us visualize blessing our co-workers with this warm pink light from our heart center. Let us silently affirm, may all our co-workers be peaceful. May all our co-workers be happy. May all our co-workers be safe. May all our co-workers awaken to the light of their true nature. May all our co-workers be free. Now, slowly, let us once again focus our awareness upon our heart center. Let us once again visualize our heart center radiating a warm pink light. This warm pink light represents the energies of loving kindness. This energy heals and blesses everything that it touches. Now, let us visualize radiating the energies of loving kindness to everyone in our home. Let us visualize our home filled with the energies of loving kindness. Let us bless everyone in our home with this energy of healing and blessing. Let us silently affirm, may everyone in our home be peaceful. May everyone in our home be happy. May everyone in our home be safe. May everyone in our home awaken to the light of their true nature. May everyone in our home be free. Now, slowly, Let us once again focus our awareness upon our heart center. Let us visualize our heart center radiating a warm pink light. This warm pink light represents the energies of loving kindness. This energy heals and blesses everything that it touches. Now, slowly, let us visualize radiating this energy of loving kindness to everyone in our street. Let us bless everyone who lives in our street with the energies of loving kindness. Let us silently affirm, may everyone in our street be peaceful. May everyone in our street be happy. May everyone in our street be safe. May everyone in our street awaken to the light of their true nature. May everyone in our street be free. Now, slowly, let us once again focus our awareness upon our heart center. Let us visualize our heart center radiating a warm pink light. This warm pink light represents the energies of loving kindness. This energy heals and blesses everything that it touches. Now, slowly, let us now visualize radiating this warm pink light to everyone in our city. Let us visualize radiating the energies of loving kindness towards our entire city. Let us bless everyone in our city with the energies of loving kindness. Let us silently affirm, may everyone in our city be peaceful. May everyone in our city be happy. May everyone in our city be safe. May everyone in our city awaken to the light of their true nature. May everyone in our city be free. Now, slowly, let us once again focus our awareness upon our heart center. Let us once again visualize our heart center radiating a warm pink light. This warm pink light represents the energies of loving kindness. This energy heals and blesses everything that it touches. Now, slowly, let us visualize radiating this warm pink light towards our entire country. Let us visualize radiating this warm pink light towards our entire country. Let us bless everyone in our country with the energies of loving kindness. Let us silently affirm, may everyone in our country be peaceful. May everyone in our country be happy. May everyone in our country be safe. May everyone in our country awaken to the light of their true nature. May everyone in our country be free. Now, slowly, let us once again focus our awareness upon our heart center. Let us once again visualize our heart center pulsating and radiating a warm pink light. This warm pink light represents the energies of loving kindness. This energy heals and blesses all that it touches. Now, slowly, let us visualize radiating this warm pink light towards the entire planet Earth. Let us visualize radiating the energies of loving kindness to everyone on our planet. Let us all silently affirm, may everyone on planet Earth be peaceful. May everyone on planet Earth be happy. May everyone on planet Earth be safe. May everyone on planet Earth awaken to the light of their true nature. May everyone on planet Earth be free. Now, gently, let us once again focus our awareness upon our heart center. Let us once again visualize our heart center radiating a warm pink light. This warm pink light represents the energies of loving kindness. This energy heals and blesses everything it touches. Let us silently affirm, Let us radiate this warm pink light towards the entire universe. Let us visualize radiating this energy of loving kindness to all sentient beings in the universe. Let us silently affirm, may all beings be peaceful. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings awaken to the light of their true nature. May all beings be free. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May all who feel themselves as one with thee know they are therefore one with every other. Peace, peace, peace. Now, slowly, let us be aware of the weight of our body against the chair. Let us be aware of the sounds all around us. And slowly open your eyes.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone. I guess with this feeling of peace and harmony, we should close this meeting.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
And
Thank you. Merry
keep tuned
Christmas.
to the activities.